Imagine the power in you've asked a question and then you say to somebody, I want to make sure I've really heard what you've said. Talk about bringing the heat down in the room. They feel so heard, and you have bought yourself at least 30 seconds to a minute to think about, okay, how do I want to address this? By the way, I've gotten that objection.
I'm going to ask you, what is your response? Because that is a common objection.
Yes. Okay. And so here's what I would say. I'm so glad you asked that. You're not the first person or the first one of my clients to ask that. I wonder if it would be helpful if I included in the proposal a list of the places where we were the first outside trainer that ever came in. And I wonder also if I could help you with the messaging, because we're talking about negotiation. Don't your learning and development people deserve to be equipped to negotiate for their own careers? Don't they deserve the same kind of help, support, and investment that the rest of your company gets? And I also wonder if it would be helpful if I shared some ways that we've utilized or showcased their expertise in the course of doing this training.
Mic drop.
Okay, right?
Love
So
that, yes. That's
the type of thing where when you surface the objection and you can handle it in that way, we landed that gig, right? And the inside training people actually pulled me aside and said, I'm so glad you're here. I've been really wanting a promotion, or I've been, wanting, more money, and I'm not sure how to ask. Benefit for everybody.
This is a great takeaway, because often people shy away from objections, personally and professionally. I was actually on a date last week, and I literally asked a gentleman, like, what are some of your concerns about me? And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what are you concerned about? Because obviously we all have our concerns. We're all kind of judging, especially like in the dating scene. We're all kind of like,
oh yeah,
everything is under assessment. But it taught me that is a really great way to not only get further insight, but to bring the defenses down and normalize having that type of conversation.
Yes, because it doesn't matter how wonderful somebody is. That client that I talked to you about, we had been vibing. When I tell you, the conversation to that point was so good, it was like a love fest. And it would have been so easy for me to just get off the call and be like, hey, I'm the woman, right? I'm going to land this deal. But when I tell you, I asked that question about what concerns you have, they looked at each other like as though they'd had this thing on their mind. They were scared to say it. And then I invited them to, and everybody relaxed in the room. And I got to tell you, as somebody who's been married 20 years, I know I'm not a perfect person, right? My husband could say there are things that I could improve. I'm sure I can't think of any right now, but
right,
I'm sure they're out there.
It's not a long list.
Right. And the same way he likes to say that I give him constructive feedback all the time. I tell him that's a sign of my investment in him as a person,
that.
right?
Yes.
But it starts with that kind of open communication. And may I just say, as women, the more we can practice this at home or in our personal lives, the easier it gets at work. And in fact, the types of boundaries and structures that we set up at home are what enable us to maintain those boundaries and structures at work. Like, the better I've gotten at really expressing myself to my husband or the people closest to me, it's empowered me to be able to do the same at work.
What are some things that you are mindful of observing, paying attention to during a negotiation? Like, is it body language? Is it like eye contact? Like, what are you paying attention to give you some clues that might suggest what's coming out of their mouth is actually not the truth?
Okay. So first of all, I try to pay attention to everything. There is no small talk in negotiation. Okay. So, I do like to get to know people, in part because I'm looking for changes from their baseline. Okay. So if, for example, you and I are chatting like this, okay, and right now you're kind of leaning toward me, you're nodding, you're looking super engaged. If I asked you a question and all of a sudden you sat back like this, or you did something with your hair, or maybe you fixed something with your sweater, that might be a clue to me that we had touched a hot button, right? That maybe something was coming up that was either important to you or made you a little nervous or upset. Sometimes the body language cues can be obvious and people don't realize they're doing them. I can't tell you the number of times, because I work in my day job at Columbia. My students and I actually go into the courts of the Bronx, and we are helping everyday New Yorkers negotiate their way out of really important disputes to them. And sometimes we'll say to them, so how might this number work for you? And the person says to me, yeah, Alex, it's totally fine. That sounds great. And I'll say to the person, your words just said yes, but your face said no. So is there a concern there that we haven't covered? Let's talk about it, right? So all of that is communication. A lot of times too, you can tell, especially around numbers, people give these little verbal leaks, right? So you're saying, listen, it's going to be whatever, $25,000 is the investment for me to come in and speak to you, just as an example. And somebody might say, well, that seems a little high, but they're writing the number down on a piece of paper. If somebody's writing a number down, they're really thinking about it. And it might be a bluff. And even if they're telling you it's out of the ballpark, you're closer than you think, right? So you want to pay attention to all the little words that people use. The other thing I would say is